This lesson is going to be on linear equations in two variables. The essential question for this lesson is, how do you solve and graph a linear equation in two variables? So, we start off and ask ourselves, what exactly is a linear equation? All right. A linear equation, first of all, an equation, just the word equation, E-Q-U-A, the first four letters, implies that we're going to have an equal sign, all right? So we're going to have an equal sign, and we've got two variables, so therefore we're going to have two letters, basically, in this. So our linear equation might look like the following. So we could have 9x plus 2y equals 15. Now, notice we have an equal sign right there. So it is an equation, and we have two variables. We have x and we have y. And we'll get into later the linear part of it. But this certainly is an equation in two variables. We have x, we have y, we have an equal sign. Now, so how do we go about solving this? Now, a solution for this is going to be a number x and a number y that makes this statement or sentence, sometimes it's referred to as an open sentence, true. Well, let's see. We could start off by saying, well, what if x equals 1? So if x equaled 1 and I plugged in x equals 1, I'd have 9 times 1 plus 2y equals 15, or 9 plus 2y equals 15. Well, what number do I have to add to 9 to get it equal to 15? Well, obviously the answer would be 6. So therefore, 2y would have to equal 6. So if 2y equals 6, what is y going to equal? So y must equal 3. So a possible solution for this equation would be x equals 1 and y equals 3. So, is that the only solution for this? Well, let's see. So let's see if x could equal 0. Well, if x equals 0, we get 9 times 0 plus 2 times y equals 15, or 2y equals 15. Or y would therefore come out equaling 15 halves. And I could obviously write that as being y equals 7.5. So I've got another possible solution that when x is equal to 0, y would equal 7.5. All right? And if we keep doing this, we discover that we have a number of different pairs of answers. And this, in fact, shows one way of solving for this by just arbitrarily picking values for one of the variables and solving the equation for the other variable. So this would give us some pairs of solutions, some ordered pairs, if you will, for this linear equation in two variables. Now, I would like you to take the equation 3x plus y equals 1 and tell me whether the following ordered pairs are solutions of the equation. So your answer should be either yes or no for each of the sets of ordered pairs, and I want you to post your answers in the drop box. So do that, and then we'll continue the video. So our next thing is to look at the fact that if we've got a solution, is there any way that we could represent this solution graphically? Well, if we're going to graph it, we'll probably want to use the xy coordinate plane, okay? Now the xy coordinate plane is going to look something like this. Now the horizontal axis is going to be our x-axis, and the vertical axis is going to be our y-axis. Now, each point on this plane has both an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate, okay? Normally, we represent the x-coordinate as first and the y-coordinate second. We also divide the plane up into 4 quadrants, where the top right quadrant is going to be quadrant 1. And in quadrant 1, both x and y are positive. To the right on the horizontal is positive, and up on the y is positive. Now, the upper left, going in a counterclockwise direction, is quadrant 2, all right? Now, in quadrant 2, x is negative, because notice we have the origin, which is at the center right here. And to the left of that, the x values are going to be negative, as you can see here. But the y values are still going to be positive in quadrant 2. Then we go down to quadrant 3, okay? And x values continue to be negative, but the y values are also negative in quadrant 3. And then we go over to quadrant 4, the lower right quadrant, and the x values now are positive, but the y values are negative. So now let's look at some of the points on this, the graph. Let's say I picked, let's see if I can get it, this point here. All right, if you look at that, we go over 6 on the x. So that point corresponds to 6. And then we go up 2 on the y. So that point corresponds to 6, 2. Now, if I have a point, say, down here, that point corresponds to 3 on the x, but minus 4 on the y. So each point on the graph has a x and y coordinate, okay? So every point here we can identify with an x coordinate and a y coordinate. So let's continue by looking at a particular example here. So let's start with a fairly simple equation in 2 variables, and that is x plus y equals 4. Now, often to take and find the solution pairs for this, I like to draw a little table. So let's start by drawing a little table here, and we'll have x values, and we'll have y values, and okay. So let's start off with some simple values. So if x equals 0, y must equal 4, obviously. And if y equals 0, x must equal 4. And if x equals 1, y must equal 3. Get 3 there, and we'll do one more. And if x equals 2, y would equal 2. All right, so we got a number of different solution sets for this equation. Well, let's see what would be involved to graph it. So here's our xy coordinate plane. Now let's just pick these values from our table here. So if x is 0, y is 4. So x is 0, y is 4. That puts it right there. If x is 4, y is 0, which puts it right there. And if x is 1, y is 3, which puts it right there. And if x is 2, y is 2, which puts it right there. And you can start to see what we've got here. If we connect these dots, what do we have? We have a straight line. And it's going to look something like that. Now, going back to our original discussion, remember we said we had linear equations. Well, that's why it's called a linear equation, because if you graph it, you've got a straight line. And actually, if you think about it, every single point on this line corresponds to a solution for x plus y equals 4. So I could pick any point on this line, and say, for example, I pick this point right here. That's the point x equals 6, y equals -2. Well, is that a solution for this? Well, if I plug in 6 for x, -2 for y, does 6 minus 2 equal 4? Yes. So you can see that's a solution. So there, every single point on that line is a solution for x plus y equals 4. So, just to review, linear equations in two variables. An equation, it's going to have an equal sign, okay? Just the fact that it says equation means equal, so it has to have an equal sign. It has to have two variables or two unknowns. Most of the time we're going to use the letters x and y for our two unknowns. And it's linear because if you graph it, if you graph all the solutions, you'll get a straight line, okay? And it's going to have an infinite number of solutions for this. And the way we find these solutions, or some of the solutions, is simply to take and start arbitrarily selecting values for one variable and solving for the other variable, okay? So we can do it as a table, and then once we've got a few solutions from the table, we can graph it and get a pictorial representation of all the solutions for this equation.